With the Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
This is your captain speaking. We've got clear runway and the weather's fine, but we're just going to circle up here a while and get lucky. No, nothing like that. It's just these cash prizes add up quick. So I suggest you sit back, keep your tray table upright, and start getting lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
I'm Victoria Cash. Thanks for calling the Lucky Land Hotline. If you feel like you do the same thing every day, press 1. If you're ready to have some serious fun for the chance to redeem some serious prizes, press 2. We heard you loud and clear. So go to LuckyLandSlots.com right now and play over 100 social casino-style games for free. Get lucky today at LuckyLandSlots.com.
Available to players in the U.S., excluding Washington and Michigan. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply.
It's time for today's Lucky Land horoscope with Victoria Cash.
Life's gotten mundane, so shake up the daily routine and be adventurous with a trip to Lucky Land. You know what they say. Your chance to win starts with a spin. So go to LuckyLandSlots.com to play over 100 social casino-style games for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. Get lucky today at LuckyLandSlots.com.
Available to players in the U.S., excluding Washington and Michigan. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply.
It's time for today's Lucky Land horoscope with Victoria Cash.
Life's gotten mundane, so shake up the daily routine and be adventurous with a trip to Lucky Land. You know what they say. Your chance to win starts with a spin. So go to LuckyLandSlots.com to play over 100 social casino-style games for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. Get lucky today at LuckyLandSlots.com.
Available to players in the U.S., excluding Washington and Michigan. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply.
Hello there, Duke fans, and welcome to DBR Bites number 48. It is Friday, May 17th, 2024, and I know we had a whole episode with me, with Jason Evans, with Scott Rich about the rotation of the guards, and today we're here to tell you that we have to add another guard to that conversation. I am Donald Wine. I'm your host for this episode. I have Jason with me. Jason is in New Orleans and Jason can explain why, but he's on his phone, ladies and gentlemen. So if he sounds like he's on his phone, it's because it is. But I can see his face. It's just not as wide screen. It's more of a portrait. You know, we have a portrait of
exactly
face on here. Jason, how you doing? And tell people why you're in New Orleans.
Yeah, I think I alluded to this in the last podcast. I'm here because my oldest son, Drew, is graduating from Tulane Law School. Huge congrats to him and to the entire Tulane graduating class. By the way, Deep Tease, also graduating from Tulane, is Sion James as he makes his way to the Blue Devils from the Tulane Green Wave. And yes, I did sit down and have coffee and some breakfast with Sion just this morning, and a little later on the podcast, I will tell you a couple little hints about what I learned from what is a really, really great guy that Duke fans are going to love.
Yeah, we'll save that for after the break. But first, Jason, let's talk about the newest entry to the Duke Blue Devils. The new guy coming to Cameron, his name is Cameron Sheffield. He is a 6'6", 195-pound guard wing transfer from Rice. He was a medical redshirt last year, so if you've been looking for stats on this guy and you couldn't find him from this past season, it's because he set out almost the entire year with an injury. I believe he is back to 100%. And will be on the Duke Blue Devils next year. Just quickly about his stats in 2022-23, which is the last full season that he played with the Rice Owls, 30.9 minutes per game, 7.6 points per game. He averaged 6.1 rebounds a game and 1.3 assists per game. Shot about 37% from three, 43% from the floor, and 77% from the line. So, Jason, we had this whole discussion about where what everyone's role could be, at least from the guards perspective, on this team next year. Now enter Cameron Sheffield, who we believe is not going to factor as much into the rotation. But what do you like about his addition to this roster for next year?
Look, you cannot have too many veterans who understand what college basketball is all about, guys who are aware of what it takes to succeed in the sport. Guys who were starters for their teams, who played significant minutes for their teams. You cannot have too many of those kind of guys to tell your freshmen, to tell your incoming players, here is what it takes to be really great at this game. And Cameron Sheffield, as you said, look, on our podcast where we were talking about the perimeter guys, we said, oh, it's possible Duke's going to bring in one more player as a practice player. And I think that's what Cameron Sheffield is. The comparison that I've made to many people is Cale Catchings. Cameron Sheffield went to Rice. Cale Catchings went to Harvard, two incredibly academically focused schools, two of the finest universities in our country. And in both cases, they were guys who played significant minutes and had starting roles for those teams. But they were not the kind of roles where you go, oh, that's a guy who's ready to move up to the next level. They weren't like, all conference kind of players or anything like that. They're complementary players on teams that are, frankly, at a lower level of competition than Duke. And when Cale Catchings came to the Blue Devils, I think maybe folks thought he might have a little bit bigger role than he ended up having. He ended up only playing in 10 games for Duke. He only played mop-up minutes, minutes in games that weren't all that competitive. I suspect Cameron Sheffield is going to be perhaps a little more of a player, a little more ready to perform at a Duke level than Cale Catchings was. But I don't think this is someone who's going to be challenging Con Knuppel or Isaiah Evans for minutes on the perimeter. I don't think this is someone who's going to factor in the rotation. But practice players matter. Practice players really matter. Having guys who can push your players when they aren't playing in games, having guys who can simulate, various players on the opposing team, be a part of the scout team. That stuff we've heard again and again from Duke players who we've spoken to over the years, how important those scout team players are. And they don't get into games that often, but they impact whether or not your team wins games. And Cameron Sheffield is going to be a guy like that for Duke. And by the way, as you mentioned, with the medical red shirt, with his COVID year, he's someone who will potentially have 2 years in the program. Mm-hmm. And look, I don't know what the roster looks like a year from now. It's possible that there is a scenario where Cameron Sheffield does begin to play a little bit more of a role for this Duke team down the line.
And again, I think you want that possibility, right? When you think about who our 12th man was this past year, it was Spencer Hubbard, who was a walk-on. He was 5'8",
right?
But when he came into the game, of course, we loved his effort and everything, but he wasn't expected to generate offense and generate points for the Duke Blue Devils. This is a situation where your 12th man on the scholarship side of things is a guy that you could expect to come in and at least be able to run an offense and even in garbage time be able to maybe get a few points. I think that's the idea here, is that you have, despite the fact that he may not be a guy who factors into the playing time and the playing minutes, he's a guy that can make your team ready for battle. And I think the one thing also, Jason, that you look at is he's 6'6". He doesn't violate the 6'5" rule that apparently is in place here for John Shire.
Exactly.
Everyone has to be his height or taller to be on this team now. And he at least has that. But also, Jason, another tease. One guy who was super excited to have him on this team was Sion James, who played against Cameron Sheffield in high school in the state championship. And they have been friends since then. So he was very excited to reunite with Cameron Sheffield, and they'll be doing that in Cameron.
Yeah, and by the way, when I had breakfast with Sion, we spoke about Cameron Sheffield very briefly, and that's one of the things that I can let folks in on, and I'll talk about it after the break. I'm not going to spoil my thunder, but I did want to mention something about Cameron Sheffield in terms of his game. It is worth noting that this is a guy who has been remarkably consistent from 3-point range in his career. As a freshman, he hit 39%. As a sophomore, he hit 36%, and as a junior, he hit 37%. Between 36 and 39% every single year as a 3-point shooter. I mean, that tells you that you pretty much know what you're going to get from this guy. If he is pressed into service, if he's someone that Duke needs to use because of an injury or who knows what else happens, a guy that you can count on to hit right around 37, 38% from three, man, that is a very, very useful addition to the team. And it is worth noting when he was at Rice, even though he played serious minutes. This guy played close to 30 minutes a game when he was at Rice. At least his last year he was there 2 years ago. He is someone who was not a high usage player. This was not a guy who was, in fact, he has one of the lowest shot percentage. He only shot the ball less than 12% of the time when he was on the floor. That's just a super low shot percentage for it's one of the lowest I've ever seen. So this is someone who, he's trying to do the little things. I think that's what you want from someone like that. You don't want to bring in a 12th man who, if he comes into the game, is going to be firing up a ton of shots. You want that kind of player to be someone who understands what it means to be a complementary player. And I think Cameron Sheffield will be ideal at that.
He also, again, if you're running out the clock, right, in garbage time, he's a guy that can make that where it's not the helter-skelter chaos that normally ensues when the players who are at the end of the bench come in at the end of games. Is usually just a lot of people just asking dudes to shoot and guys trying to take 30-footers or trying to dunk. This guy can at least be able to run the offense and stuff. And Jason, I think it's important to note, you mentioned his minutes, right? You mentioned he played 31 minutes a game as a junior. The year before that, he only played about 16 minutes a game. And everything that he did when he elevated the number of minutes on the floor, everything doubled, right? He doubled the number of minutes. He almost doubled the number of minutes game he played. And a lot of his categories went up by double. Points per game. The fact is, rebounding per game, I think, is really interesting. 6.1. Again, I feel like, Jason, when we talk about the predictions for this team, rebounding is going to be something that is going to be a particular point of emphasis, because there should be nobody who should out-rebound us next year, given the fact that we are going to be the tallest team in college basketball, and we just got taller by adding a 12th guy above 6'5".
Yeah, and the last thing I'll say about Cameron Sheffield, we're talking about his game, things like that. Again, I want to stress, I don't believe that this is someone that we're going to see playing in meaningful games. Our conversation about the rotation that we had and the roles that players have, I don't think changes one bit with the addition of Cameron Sheffield, but practice players matter. I said that again and again, and I want to stress it. And having a high quality practice kind of guy like Cameron Sheffield on your roster, that's a super good thing. I honestly don't know how John Shire convinces some of these guys to come to Duke and play, a lesser role and be a part of hopefully winning a national title. If we're ready after the break to move on to my conversation with Sion, I will tell you that, quote unquote, winning a championship, those words came out of his mouth multiple times when we were having coffee. So these guys understand the expectations on them and the ultimate goal that they have next year at Duke.
And my last point, complimenting yours on Cameron Sheffield, when you talk about practice players, we're not talking about the guys who are just bodies in practice. We're talking about guys who can mimic an offensive player for another team when you are trying to get ready for a big time opponent, right? When we have some of these big games that we have, right, that are coming up that we've either confirmed or rumored, some of these big games that we have, and even in the ACC, and this is no disrespect to Spencer Hubbard, but a 5'8" guy can't mimic a 6'4" starting point guard for Clemson or for UNC or for Arizona, but a 6'6" guard can, and he can mimic. And we think about some of the championship teams we've had in the past. They had one guy, and we go back to even 2001. They had Dante Jones, who couldn't play, so his practice was his games, and he was able to mimic the opponent and get that team ready to face any opponent that they had in their schedule. 2010, you had Seth Curry, who was able to do the same thing to mimic whatever guard that they're facing in the ACC for them to get ready for that game. This is what Cameron Sheffield can do, and that's why practice players are so important, and that's why we're glad to have them on our team. Jason, let's take a quick break. On the other side, we're going to talk a little bit more about Sion James and what you learned over a cup of Joe. More after this.
Hey there, Duke fans. Warmer, sunnier days are calling. Fuel up for them with Factor's no prep, no mess meals. Meet your wellness goals in time for summer thanks to the menu of chef-created meals with options like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are dietitian approved and ready to eat in just 2 minutes. So no matter how busy you are, you'll always have time to enjoy nutritious, great-tasting meals.
That's right, Jason. And Jason, I can tell you, I just got some meals. They're fantastic. And the great thing is, like you said, 2 minutes. Mindless work. Pop it in the microwave, do what you need to do, and it's ready to eat. No more cooking, no more cleaning pots and pans. And also, there's a lot of choices with 35 different meals and more than 60 add-ons to choose from every week. So you'll always have new flavors to explore.
All right, so head to factormeals.com/DukeBB50. Use that code DukeBB50 to get 50% off your first box plus 20% off your next month. That's code DukeBB50 at factormeals.com. Get 50% off your first box, 20% off your next month while your subscription is active. Enjoy Factor Meals from the Duke Basketball Roundup.
With Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today to... Has anyone seen the bride and groom?
Sorry, we're here. We were getting lucky in the limo and we lost track of time.
No, Lucky Land Casino, with cash prizes that add up quicker than a guest registry.
In that case, I pronounce you lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Daily bonuses are waiting. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
Step into the world of power, loyalty, and luck.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
With family, cannolis, and spins mean everything.
Now, you wanna get mixed up in the family business.
Introducing The Godfather at ChumbaCasino.com. Test your luck in the shadowy world of The Godfather slot.
Someday, I will call upon you to do a service for me.
Play The Godfather, now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Welcome to the family.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply.
All right, we're back. And as we mentioned at the top, Jason is down in New Orleans. He's there for his son's graduation at Tulane, and he had the opportunity to grab some coffee this morning with Sion James. The first thing, Jason, I have to ask you as we get into this is, what were the orders? What's your coffee order? What did Sion drink? Was he more of a latte guy, or was he just stone black coffee?
So I'll tell you. So we both ordered tea. I'm a chai tea latte.
Okay, so this was the tea trip. Okay, we're going to the coffee shop to get some tea.
Yeah, so I'm a chai tea latte guy, and Sion ordered peppermint tea.
Oh, I love peppermint tea.
Oh, it smelled delicious. Let me tell you something.
Before I was a coffee drinker, peppermint tea was my go-to if I went to a restaurant, because you got the aroma. You got everybody talking.
Yeah, exactly. I had a croissant. Sion had some fruit and yogurt. By the way, he showed up. He had a white shirt with a green tie, really nice slacks. And I said to him, "Oh, you're all dressed for graduation. This is what what a great guy this kid is." He said, "Yeah, graduation's at 11. I'm just going to throw my robe on over this." And I look at my watch, and it's like 9 a.m. I'm like, "Dude, what are you doing meeting with me when your graduation's like 2 hours away?" He said, "I really want to connect with the Duke community. I want, you were so nice in reaching out to me." And he said, "I really, want to get to know the people who cover the team and are passionate about the team." I'm like, man, just a great guy. He said he's got lots of family in town, of course, but for him to make time for me on his graduation day, I almost feel awful.
And it speaks to him, right? Like, it speaks to the fact that I've had this happen in the soccer world where things come up, and as you mentioned, we were trying to get him on this show, and other factors prevailed, and we couldn't get him on the show. But the fact that he still was like, "Hey, you're coming all the way out here. Let me make some time for you on one of the most important days of his life." I think that's really cool.
Yeah, and we had a delightful conversation. I'm going to save a lot of what we talked about for when you and I talk to him later on down the road. He said that Duke has asked all these players to do an episode of the Brotherhood podcast before they do an episode, before they do other media, which is totally understandable.
Fair, absolutely fair.
Yeah, and I said to him, I absolutely endorsed that, and we talked at length about the media behind the Duke program, and we talked about the Brotherhood podcast and Ryan Young creating it and how special it was. And he was very, very excited to be a part of this Duke community and all the multimedia kind of stuff that goes with it. Just came across to me as a super thoughtful kind of guy. We talked a little bit about his foundation. He said that as soon as word got out that he was visiting Duke, he said, he's like, I didn't announce anything, but like this, this word filtered out that I was going to come visit Duke. And he goes, suddenly, like my social media mentions start exploding. He's like, I got all these extra followers. He's like, oh my God, what's going on? And he said, and then when I committed, people found my foundation. He's like, I didn't say anything to them, but they found my foundation. And he said, he's like, the numbers, the money behind this foundation where I'm trying to help, disadvantaged youth in right now in New Orleans. We didn't really talk about whether or not he's going to bring it to Durham, but my bet would be he's going to bring it to Durham. He's like, the numbers just exploded with Duke fans who want to support it and help me out. And I said to Sion, I said, look, the reason I reached out to you was I saw this foundation work that you've done. And I was like, I want to get our people, the DBR listeners, behind it as well. And he was so thankful about that. He said to me, and this is the kind of guy he is. He said, the fact that everybody's donating and paying attention to my foundation now, he goes, it puts extra pressure on me to have more events, to do more things, to find ways to amplify that, amplify the success stories of the foundation. I was just like, as opposed to being a kid who's like, oh, look, all this extra money that I can just give away. He's like, no, what can I do with all of this to turn it into something even bigger and bigger? There was not a single second that I was talking to this guy that I wasn't like incredibly impressed with him. He is going to be a beloved Dookie. I am absolutely certain of that.
Jason, first of all, you should have said, hey, welcome to the real world, right? Like joking, you graduate, you think everything's all good. No, you have more work to do as an adult. That's the price. That's the price you pay of graduating and being a full-fledged adult. But no, I think that's great. And I know, Jason, we'll talk more about the foundation when we get him on. We're going to kind of amount to challenge.
We're going to challenge all of you. I haven't decided what the number is, but there's going to be a number that we're going to put out there that we want all of you to help us reach to really welcome Sion and support, what he's trying to do to help out people. He's giving of his own time and his own money. By the way, when we talk about that foundation, we're going to talk about the fact that he has skin in the game in a big kind of way. When the time comes, we're going to tell all of you how you can donate. And I'm hoping that our listeners really step up to the plate and welcome Sion in a meaningful kind of way.
So I'm glad that you were able to sit down with him and glad that you got to share a few minutes with him. And I'm glad he's already feeling the love, right? We don't normally get that side of things. We can see the social media posts one way or the other, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're reading the comments, so to speak. And so for him to feel like he's been welcomed so warmly, good job, Duke fans. That's what we're supposed to do for all our recruits. So I really appreciate that. But I also appreciate the fact that, again, a guy who has so much going on was able to take a few minutes to just talk Duke. And I think he's going to learn, that the fans out here are super, super great. As you mentioned, if he's going to become one of the beloved Duke players, look, Ryan Young came in kind of a similar fashion, right? He's just like, hey, I'm not making some grand announcement. I'm just going to go to this Duke place and play a little basketball. And now he is a full-fledged fan favorite. I wish for that for all of these guys that come in next year, but also if it has a nice little charitable approach to it, that's even better. And hopefully we can help him make those dreams continue to elevate with his foundation.
Yeah, last thing I'll mention, this was just sort of a funny kind of story, was that we were talking a little bit. He was like, how did you get to do this? How are you like, one of the podcasters, one of the people covering the team now and stuff? And I said, well, look, I'll start and go back to where it all began, which was, the original line outside Cameron. And I was telling him the stories about, me being sort of the first unofficial line monitor and that kind of thing. And he was like, wait, the line existed all the way back then. I'm like, I'm telling stories from 1986 and stuff. And at various times I was, at one point I was talking to him a little bit about, some of the connections I've made on the 2001 team, your era, Donald. And that's something he's like, I wasn't even born back then.
Jason, if you think about it, right? Like even on this show, you and I, we know that there was a world that existed before Kville, right? There was a world that existed before Kville, before there was a line for which there needed to be a monitor placed in charge of which we were able to do that so successfully. Sam was born into a world where that already existed, and he was on this show, right? So now we're in this world where, these freshmen who are entering were born after I graduated college. Some of them were born after I graduated law school, which is I was a full-fledged adult who could rent vehicles at that point. So yeah, this is a new world where people are going to be like, wow, I didn't know that was so old. And you're going to be like, but it's not. But it's so fun to kind of think about the perspective of some of these young guys entering the team.
Last thing, and I will break a little bit of news here with this. The entire team is expected to and planning to be on campus next week for K Academy. Like I said to Sian, I was like, oh, how much time off are you getting, after you graduate here from Tulane? He goes, oh, I'm headed right up to Durham. He's like, we're going to be there for K Academy. He said, all of us. And I said, well, not Common Malawach, right? And he said, I'm not sure. He goes, I don't know if he's going to make it to K Academy, but they said he's definitely going to come spend some time with us and be a part of the team before he goes off to France to play in the Olympic. So I haven't heard that from anybody before. I hope I'm not violating anything by it doesn't, I don't think once Common Malawach shows up on campus, people will know he's there.
It'll be easy to spot him. Yeah.
Exactly.
Easy to spot all of them, really.
Yeah. But that, I sort of feel comfortable that that's a little piece of news that I'm not sure everybody knew, that I'm not sure was out there. I've been saying for a while that I thought that Common Malawach was going to take a little bit longer to be ready for the start of the season, because I thought there was no way he would even get to campus prior to the Olympics being over in mid-August. I may have been wrong about that. And maybe they figured something out in terms of, what he's doing between now and the start of the Olympics and the start of training camp for that South Sudan team. I don't know their full schedule, but there's a window here. And if he's going to be able to come to Duke and really begin working with these guys and beginning to understand the program and the such, that's a big deal for Duke in terms of having him ready earlier than expected.
Thinking about the timeline for when those guys usually report, right? It's usually about a month before the Olympics start, which is in late July. So, and then they have those games that they have in mid-July, the like warm-up games that they'll do in advance of the Olympics. So my guess is
South Sudan's playing the U.S. in some of those warm-up games. So
yeah, I think that's going to be over in like London or something like that. But what that means is he probably has a good 3 weeks, 3, maybe even 4 on campus to gel with his teammates and get that process started before he has to go, which I think the fact that they're able to do that is a great thing. Jason, we will leave it here on this DBR Bites. As we mentioned, we predicted, or we started our predictions of what some of the roles are going to be for the guards. Next week, at some point, we'll bring Scott Rich back on here. We're going to do the bigs. We'll also maybe talk about Cameron Sheffield a little bit more, but I think we got most of that out of the way when it comes to what his playing time is going to be and how he fits into this matrix that is the Duke 2024-25 roster. But until then, for Jason Evans, Jason, first of all, congratulations to your son and to the rest of you. Pass along our well wishes. Graduating law school is a wonderful thing because it means the bar is right around the corner, and he is going to hate life for the next 3 months. I promise you. Yeah, but it is worth it.
Yeah, we've been telling him like, oh, exams are over and the such, but you got the biggest exam coming up.
Yep. It's gonna be fun for him. Let him know if he needs any advice as a counselor. I can advise him on that. But that is for another day. That is Jason. I am Donald. This has been DBR Bites number 48. And now it is time for the Duke band to play us out and take us home.